Sometimes life strikes so hard it feels like the world has conspired to break you down to your bones, leaving you with nothing but grief and empty pockets. For Eli Morgan, that moment came the day he buried his wife, Sarah, and was left standing at the grave with his 10-year-old son Lucas clutching his hand, and a stack of unpaid bills waiting at home. He had no plan, no savings, and no one to lean on, just the crushing weight of responsibility on shoulders already bent by loss. And then, like fate had been holding its breath, a letter arrived from a lawyer's office. The letter revealed that Eli had inherited a cabin from a father he never knew, a man who had vanished from his life before he could even walk. With no future in Kansas, Eli packed what little they owned into a wheezing old Ford pickup, clothes, a toolbox, and Lucas's school books, and drove for 3 days into the mountains. What they found when they finally pulled up to the property wasn't a home. It was a skeleton of one. The roof sagged, the porch leaned, windows were boarded up, and the silence of long abandonment clung to the walls. But standing beside his son, staring at the weathered logs perched on a rocky shelf above the valley, Eli felt a spark. Lucas whispered, "It looks like it's been waiting for us." And in that fragile moment, father and son stepped into a new life, not knowing the cabin held secrets that would change everything. The first nights in the cabin were cold, but filled with a strange comfort neither expected. They ripped boards off windows to let the mountain sunlight flood in, swept away decades of dust, and lit the wood stove for soup as stars poured across the sky in numbers Lucas had never seen before. Slowly, the house began to breathe again, as though grateful for company after years of silence. But it was Lucas, curious and sharp-eyed like his late mother, who made the discovery that cracked open their world. On a rainy afternoon, he found a loose floorboard in what had been his grandfather's workshop. With Eli's pry bar, they uncovered a hidden brass lever marked with the initials M, Eli's father's name, Edmund Morgan. When Eli pulled it, the cabin itself seemed to sigh, and a section of the floor slid open, revealing a narrow staircase into darkness. With flashlights trembling in their hands, they descended into a hidden chamber carved from stone. Inside were shelves stacked with journals, maps, military manuals, and in the center, a steamer trunk that seemed to pulse with history. Letters tied in ribbon, photographs of a young soldier, coded sheets of numbers, and at the very bottom a heavy brass key engraved with strange markings and the word legacy. The air was thick with secrets, and for the first time in his life, Eli realized his father had not abandoned him out of neglect. This was deliberate. This was planned. His father had hidden something that demanded to be found. As Eli and Lucas studied the journals, a portrait of Edmund Morgan began to emerge, not of a coward who had fled his family, but of a man who had carried the scars of war so deep they dictated every choice he made. Edmund had been a cryptographer during World War II, a codebreaker who shortened battles and saved lives, but who carried regrets like stones in his pockets. His writings spoke of secrecy, of danger, of a life lived in shadows where revealing too much could put loved ones at risk. Yet beneath the technical documents and maps was evidence of a man who had spent 40 years surveying the mountains, marking streams, charting wildlife patterns, and most importantly, identifying deposits of gold. The journals revealed that Edmund had discovered veins of the precious metal in the 1980s. But rather than cash it in, he extracted it quietly, methodically, and stored it in hidden vaults beneath the mountain. Lucas's sharp eyes caught patterns in the coded letters, and together they began to unlock phrases like alpine cache and repository. The brass key, it seemed, was no ordinary keepsake. It was the key to a vault marked on multiple maps northeast of the cabin. As the rain cleared outside, father and son stood over the documents, hearts pounding with the realization that they weren't just reading a story, they were stepping into it. The next morning, backpacks loaded and compass in hand, Eli and Lucas followed Edmund's meticulous maps into the mountains. Every twist of the trail matched the notes, every stacked cairn confirmed their path, as if Edmund himself were guiding them from beyond the grave. Hours into their climb, they found a hidden spring, beside which sat a locked metal chest designed to fit their ornate key. With a trembling hand, Eli turned the lock, and inside lay the blueprint of something extraordinary, underground maps of vast caverns, marked with the same symbols from Edmund's notes. The largest was labeled Repository. Following the directions, they found a cave concealed behind thick mountain laurel. With flashlights cutting through the dark, they descended into a chamber that made them both gasp. Along the walls, in waterproof containers stacked with military precision, were supplies, food, tools, medical kits, equipment for survival. But in the center was another locked chest, engraved with the words "For my son and his son," the real legacy. When Eli opened it, he found not just geological reports proving the mountain was rich with gold, but letters written in his father's careful hand. They spoke of regret, of love, of preparing for a future he would never see. The gold, Edmund wrote, was not the treasure. The treasure was the chance to start over, to build a life stronger than the one he had ruined. And in that dark chamber, Eli finally felt the anger of abandonment soften into something else, understanding. But the mountain was not theirs alone, and secrets that glitter always attract shadows. Sheriff Wade Carver, the law in the nearby town, appeared at Eli's cabin under the guise of unpaid property taxes. His smile was polite, but his words dripped with threat. He hinted at assets Edmund might have hidden, suggested that debts could be erased if Eli shared, and let his gaze linger on Lucas just long enough to make the danger plain. Eli recognized the type. Carver was no sheriff serving justice. He was a predator sniffing out fortune. A visit to the courthouse confirmed it. Edmund's taxes had always been paid, but Carver had a history of forcing families off their land under false claims, selling property to developers with suspicious ties. When word of Carver's interest reached Martha Caldwell, a sharp-eyed neighbor and Edmund's longtime confidant, she warned Eli, "That man is poison. He's been circling this mountain for years." Martha revealed that Edmund had left not only treasure but evidence. Recordings, documents, proof of Carver's corruption hidden alongside the gold. With federal contacts from Edmund's old intelligence days, Eli had allies he never expected. The stage was set for a battle, not just for treasure, but for justice. What followed were days of strategy worthy of the codebreaker himself. Guided by Edmund's maps, Eli, Lucas, and Martha moved the gold from the main vault into smaller hidden caches scattered across the mountain, making sure Carver could never seize it in one swoop. Lucas proved his grandfather's heir in more ways than one, deciphering symbols, reading terrain, and carrying his share with determination far beyond his years. At the same time, Martha and townsfolk began to speak out, armed with Edmund's meticulous records of Carver's extortion. For decades, the sheriff had used fear to control the county, but now fear was turning against him. And just as Edmund had foreseen, the community began to awaken. By the time Carver announced he would seize the Morgan property under emergency orders, the trap had already been set. Federal investigators, tipped off by Edmund's old colleagues, were watching closely. Eli wasn't just protecting his inheritance anymore. He was defending his father's honor, his son's future, and a community's right to stand free from corruption. On a cold Saturday morning, Carver arrived at the cabin with men in tow, ready to bully his way into the vault. But instead of frightened compliance, he found Eli standing firm, Martha at his side, and Lucas watching with the quiet courage of a boy who had already carried secrets heavier than gold. Hidden cameras captured every word, every threat, every illegal order Carver barked. And when federal agents stepped from the trees with badges in hand, the sheriff's face paled. The man who had preyed on families for years was suddenly the hunted. As Carver was led away in handcuffs, Eli felt a tide of relief rush through him, but also something deeper, a sense that he had finally closed a circle begun decades before. Edmund's treasure was safe, but more importantly, so was the integrity of the family name. The mountain was no longer a hiding place. It was home. That night, as firelight flickered on the cabin walls, Eli read aloud from his father's journal while Lucas leaned against his shoulder. The words carried across 3 generations, binding past mistakes to present hope. "The gold is not the treasure," Edmund had written. "The real treasure is the chance to begin again." For Eli and Lucas, that truth had become flesh and blood. They had inherited not just wealth, but resilience, community, and a reminder that sometimes the past isn't meant to chain you, it's meant to guide you forward. And as the stars stretched endless above the mountain, they finally felt at peace. If you've been with me through this story, ask yourself, what would you do if a secret legacy was left in your hands? Would you protect it, share it, or let it change you forever? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want more stories like this, tales of hidden legacies, family courage, and secrets waiting to be unearthed, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and share this video with someone who loves a story worth hearing. Because here, the treasure isn't just in the gold, it's in the stories we carry together.